This morning we tried to wake people up a bit by throwing around stash from some of the sponsors, but I made a huge error. I didn't have very aerodynamic stash. But I fixed that now with rubber sumos. Who wants a rubber sumo? Yeah, we're going to go long. There's one in the... Yeah. Okay, that was slightly more active than I thought. Another one? Yes, sir. What was that? That was your voice. There we go. Okay, and I also found aerodynamically packed T-shirts. Who wants a New Relic T-shirt? Double XL. Hands going. Yeah? You can wear it as a nightie. There we go, good. Anyone for a small? Yes, that man there. And well, now you're awake. And a large. Yes, that man in the back. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to stop doing this now and sit down. But before I do that, big round of applause, please, for Sharon Steed.
All right. Here with me, this is my first time ever doing PowerPoint along with this talk, so this could be disastrous, but we'll find out. All right, so the great thing about the tech industry is that there is so much disruption and innovation. But unfortunately, there isn't a ton of that happening on the communications end of things, which is kind of crazy because there isn't anything more important than how you communicate with people. Being able to concisely express your ideas while inspiring people to act and empowering them to listen is one of the most valuable commodities that we have to sell as people. But what happens when you abandon selling yourself and you embrace buying others? You become a better communicator, and it's not for the reasons that you might think. As you can tell, I have a speech impediment. I stutter. Because I stuttered, I chose to be a writer because I was terrified of talking to people. I have worked with a lot of tech industry people and tech companies, and one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of developers have kind of the same communication issue that I have. They chose to be developers because, quite frankly, it's easier to talk to a computer than it is to talk to a person. And I know that very, very well, as you can tell right now. After over a decade as a writer, with almost 8 of those being in a marketing capacity, I have learned a thing or two about what companies think they have to do in order to get eyes on their products. They talk about social impact and hashtags and SEO and Twitter and Facebook, and of course, branding. But the problem with that word is that a lot of companies are truly afraid to be themselves, flaws and all. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why am I talking about marketing in a talk titled How to Talk to Humans? Well, that's because marketing is communication and vice versa. But all of you guys already know that. There isn't any marketing without some kind of conversation happening between a speaker and a listener. And to that end, we're constantly talking to people on a daily basis. And we're doing it in person and over the phone, verbally and non-verbally, online and offline, through our company's brands and our own personal ones. And so when it comes to both marketing and conversation, we generally stick with what we know. And that's only talking about the really positive things about ourselves or our companies. But that actually does make a ton of sense because that's who we are as people. One of our basic needs is to be liked. And so since being accepted is a part of our DNA, it makes perfect sense that we would enhance specific aspects of our personalities in order to impress people. But what about all of the other stuff? All of the things that we try to ignore and that we pretend don't exist. The things that we try to hide. We shun those things in an effort to seem a lot more likable. Well, what would happen if we stopped doing that? And is it possible that those things that we're so afraid to share with people, the things that make us insecure and vulnerable, is it possible that those things are the keys to the quote-unquote conversational kingdom? So if communication is marketing, how are you marketing yourself? It took me years to be, whoops, I skipped over some stuff, sorry about that. I finally came to a point where I could see the damage that the problems I was having with my speech was doing to my relationships, both personally and professionally. But most importantly, the relationships that I had with myself. I stopped viewing myself as a person of value and began to only measure my worth by the things that I could and could not say. So I adjusted my personality to cater more towards my insecurities about my speech. Instead of talking to people, I chose to actually listen to them. And so because of stuttering, I had to learn how to listen and ask follow-up questions as my way of being a meaningful part of the conversation. Unfortunately, that was rooted out of fear. But as I got older, I realized how much of an asset it was. Because I was so afraid to speak to people, I had to value their contributions in order to have any conversation with them at all. As a result, it made the other person feel a lot more valuable. And as a result of that, they were a lot more interested in carrying on a conversation and a relationship with me. And so this begs the question, what if our fears and our vulnerabilities and our assets are actually sorry, messed that up. First time using a PowerPoint, everything's all messed up now. Sorry. This begs the question, what if our fears and vulnerabilities are actually assets? Today, I want to challenge you to abandon your strengths and explore your weaknesses. So often, weakness and doubt are considered bad things, but they don't always have to be negatives. The Italian intellectual Eugenio Colorni says that doubt is creative because it allows for alternative ways to see the world. I believe that doubt and vulnerability are the quickest ways to have empathy when you are talking to other people. Why is empathy important? Because empathy builds community. Empathy is defined as the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. It's not feeling sorry for a person, but it is understanding where the person is coming from and taking that into account in your healings with them. Empathy is pretty easy to spot, but it's difficult to exhibit. And though we as humans are naturally wired to connect, a lot of us find it difficult to be patient enough to truly relate to others. And I can understand that tenfold. It took me years to be truly okay with my speech, and I struggle with it even now. But we all have our own difficulties to manage, and I constantly lost sight of that because I was too busy thinking about my own struggles. So instead of looking at our shortcomings as burdens that only we bear, why don't we view them as a way to relate more to others, or to bring us closer to other peoples, or to have more empathy for the plight that we all go through in this world. And what if we chose to view those struggles, those weaknesses as the thread that binds us all together? and that helps us truly connect with other people. Having empathy makes us human. As a writer, I had to learn how to craft a message, and I've spent over a decade deciphering the code of language in all forms: online, offline, in person, verbally, non-verbally. And I noticed that because there is so much content out there, there's so much conversation, that it's very easy to get lost in the greater ecosystem. And so we try to speak louder in an effort to be heard. But the problem with doing that is that the art of storytelling is truly lost. So storytelling is tapping into another person's experience in order to share your own. How do we do that? It's by being open about all of the things that we go through, all of the failures, all of the successes, the heartaches, the passionate things, like all of the things that make us us. I think that we get lost in our own messages far too often. But again, that's normal, because as I talked about before, as people, we only want to talk about the positive things because we want other people to embrace and accept us. We focus on the things that make us seem interesting and intelligent, especially when we're talking to other people. But what about all of the other stuff that we don't talk about? All of the times where we failed miserably and we live to talk about it. Those times are just as important as all of the instances when we were facing great adversity and had resounding success. Because those are the defining moments in our personal and professional stories. And I understand that well because I had to face a really big fear of mine, and it was a fear that I never thought I could face. So the first time I spoke to college students, and it was about stuttering. And I was pretty terrified, only because I had never talked about it before, and I didn't know how I would be received. When you're talking about personal things with people, there is a chance that you could be rejected or ridiculed, and I was pretty terrified of that. But isn't that all of us? Aren't we all afraid that people are not going to be receptive to the things that we have say. You see, I was worried that the thing that made me the most insecure would be ridiculed. But what actually happened is that I was embraced, and I was able to connect with people on a deeper level. And that was all because I was willing to tell my story in an effort to create an environment for better communication. Author and researcher Corinne Brown put it best. Vulnerability is actually the courage to show up and to be seen. And she made a great point that we feel the most vulnerable when we are doing something that's courageous. So being vulnerable and sharing my story actually helped me to form deeper connections with those around me. Once I accepted my insecurities, I shared them without shame, and I opened myself up to criticism. I found that people didn't judge me. They truly did accept me. And they wanted to both learn about me as well as tell me about things that were happening in their lives and how they were trying to overcome their own struggles. This is how you talk to humans. It's by being empathetic enough to hear other people's stories and being courageous enough to share your own. So, what's your disruption? What scares you? What makes you vulnerable and afraid? That's your sweet spot. That is what is going to capture your audience and make you compelling. Both while you're talking, but more importantly, while you are listening to them. People are going to tell you that you need to be the strongest communicator to succeed, the best orator to tell your story, and the most articulate to move the masses. But sometimes the truth is that you need to be the most transparent one. Thank you.
Sharon, thank you so much. It was incredible. Do we have any questions from the room? Over here. Yes, sir. I'll wait. Let's see if we can make this work.
So often in conversations, especially in business, they'll be dominated by the more extroverted, the louder people, the less empathetic. And I'm wondering if you have advice for both the more introverted and the more extroverted to be able to get more out of those conversations.
Right. Yeah. So introverted people, I consider myself an introvert. Like being around other people can be pretty draining for me. And so I try to kind of break down the group and just talk to like a person at a time. Even in a meeting, it's a lot harder to like talk to a single person in like an entire group. But if you can pretend that you're only talking to like a single person, I think that that makes it easier. In terms of dealing with people that talk a lot and are very loud, jump in where you can, and I think eye contact helps a lot, right? Like just don't break eye contact. Like, look, I have something to say. I'm going to tell you, you know, this thing, and you just really have to stand firm in it, right? And if you are an extroverted person who is, you know, like more loud and in your face, then stop talking for 2 minutes and let somebody else kind of get into the conversation. So I don't know how helpful that could be. I mean, because that's a really like hard situation to navigate, but just I think eye contact is the best way to just get people's attention, and you know, just hold there and just don't let it go.
Any more questions from the room? Nobody? Am I missing anyone? No? Then I had one of my own, which is that you said that when you started sharing your vulnerability with other people, they would share theirs with you as well. Mm-hmm. I've managed a lot of software teams when I've been trying to get shyer people to be, how do you put that, to contribute more to the group. Mm-hmm. Do you have any experience with the difference between sort of group settings and one-on-one for getting people to open up?
I think that the best thing to do is everybody kind of has to be comfortable in order to share. Even if you are shy or are dealing with people who have a hard time speaking up in a group, you really do have to create an environment that's very welcoming and just calm almost. I know that that's hard to do, especially like in teams where teams change, people are kind of in and out. But it really helps if whoever is in charge, just kind of takes the lead there and just creates just a more calm, open conversational environment. Does that make sense? Like, the leader of the group has to set the example. So it's kind of like having an open door policy, but in, a larger group. Does that make sense?
Works for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. We have time for any questions in case... yes, there we go, sir.
I think it's a follow-up question to what he asked. What if the leader is the loud person and is trying to shut off any dissenting opinions? He just wants to get his point through and make it happen and disappear type person, right? So how do you kind of calm the situation down, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge only because the person in charge isn't actually helping people. Again, I think the best way to deal with those types of people who are going to give you that kind of trouble, even if they are like a superior, is to just talk to them and say look, you are doing these things and it's making me a little bit uncomfortable, and I don't feel like I can come to you in a group setting and do my job well because of the way that you come off. A lot of times, people who are that overbearing, it's a way to mask their own insecurities. And so the easiest way is to just pull them to the side and just have, a very honest conversation. So try that. Thanks.
Any more questions from the room? No? Oh, yes, there.
So, as one of the self-professed, loud extroverts, I've spent a number of years trying to teach myself to interact, better with people. And one of the first lessons that I learned was you let people finish. You don't cut them off in the middle of sentences. Mm-hmm. You let them finish their thoughts. Because it's an aggressive thing to cut somebody off. But, over the last year or two, I've realized that sometimes you can find a word for somebody. You can help them express their thought more clearly than they might otherwise. And I was wondering if you have any advice for how to deal with those two contradictory imperatives. Am I better off shutting up, or am I better off trying to read people and helping when I can?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the most annoying answer ever. It depends on the person. If this is a person that you don't know, I would say just allow them to finish, because you never know how a person is going to take that. I know that I have issues with people who are trying to complete my sentences, and I'm like, no, I'm not done, and that and it is insulting, but I realize that a lot of people don't always understand that, right? So it truly does depend on the person. A lot of the times, people are going to give you little conversational cues as to how to talk to them. If their voice is kind of trailing off at the end of sentences, then they probably just want you to help them out, so to speak. But if they are maintaining eye contact with you and they're still, processing, I would say allow them to speak. So always be aware of the cues that other people, are giving you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, another one down in the front.
Hi. First of all, thank you for being yourself and being so vulnerable. It's awesome.
Thank you.
It's not often seen. I was thinking of a large company CEO. You probably wouldn't see him doing that. So that's a great quality. So I'm basically, my issue, and I talked with my wife about it, she reminds me, is I completely miss body language cues. Mm-hmm. Like somebody's talking, I'll be rambling for 20 minutes about something obscure, and the guy's like, or my wife's like, Greg, do you notice a guy wanted to leave for 20 minutes? I'm like, he didn't say anything.
You sound like my mom.
I'm like, just say it. If you say it,
She's like, I didn't know.
Yeah. So in that, do you have any books or anything, or like websites or resources basically I could go like geek out on and be like, oh, let me go figure out how humans work a little bit better, so that
yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, there are actually a couple of TED Talks on body, posture and how different postures convey different messages. So if you just hop on YouTube and just put in TED Talk posture, you're gonna get and just tons of information. It's incredibly interesting, so that should be pretty helpful. Oh, and then also, there is a book. It's not really about posture. It's a lot more about social interaction. Have you heard of emotional intelligence?
I have that book.
You do, there
I
you
read
go.
like half of it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got issues with this. Then I started studying Perl or something.
Pearl. Well, I mean that makes sense. This is what you do. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question if there is one anywhere. Yeah, really? All the way down there?
I actually just wanted to add a note really quick that there was a book that I liked a lot called Quiet, The Power of
It's a good one.
Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And I would highly recommend that one as well. Sorry for just adding points to your
No,
talk.
that's okay. We're all here to help each other.
Thank you. Okay, that's that then. Sharon, I want to say a personal thank you. I thought that was very inspirational, and you don't get that kind of thing very often at software conferences. I think we probably need more of it. A big round of applause for Sharon, please.